The 1998 Child's Play sequel Bride of Chucky, directed by Ronny Yu. Now, if you've been following my reviews for the earlier entries in this series, you'll know that I'm a big fan of the original trilogy. I gave all three of those movies 4 out of 5. They're just great little slasher movies with a little sprinkling of comedy on top. Great stuff. This film promised to up the ante a little bit by introducing a girlfriend for Chucky. So there'll be 2 dolls operating like a tag team, presumably. So not just Chucky running around on his own. And I really like the idea. I was sort of looking forward to seeing it. Unfortunately, the comedy in this film, from just being a little bit in the previous films, has been ramped up to about 10 for this one. And the horror has been pulled down to about 1. It's not really a combination that is good for me. I'm not a big horror comedy person. You know, I can count on one hand the amount of horror comedies I've seen in my life, despite the fact that I've seen probably thousands of horror films. So Tremors comes to mind, maybe Gremlins, Critters, Cabin Fever. I mean, it's a short list. So I don't think I was ever destined to enjoy this film anywhere near as much as the other Child's Plays. But the problems are not just because of that. I mean, at the start of the film, there's this... So you've got Tiffany, Charles Lee Ray's ex-girlfriend, who would eventually become his doll girlfriend. She steals his remains from this police locker and then uses voodoo to bring him back. But this process, it takes so long, and it feels like 15, 20 minutes. And I don't know if it's the casting of Jennifer Tilly or the fact that this character is just so one-dimensional and unlikable. But this whole section where we just follow human Tiffany was a real drag for me. And then just when you think Chucky's finally going to come on the scene, which will make it better, that this weird Marilyn Manson type character suddenly comes into Tiffany's trailer and for a really long scene just to delay it even more. To be fair, when Chucky is finally around and Tiffany gets turned into a doll herself, then the movie actually becomes enjoyable for quite some time. I got into it at that point. I had some laughs with it. I enjoyed the dialogue. I enjoyed the jokes. Brad Dourif, again playing Chucky, is just amazing at the way he just delivers all of his lines. And yeah, I was having a good time for a while. I'd say for about half an hour maybe, as they go on this road trip and have a few antics and do a few kills. But after roughly that length of time, I suddenly realised that I was not enjoying it anymore. And there was still a bit of the film to come at this point. And I just think that half an hour is roughly about the amount of time that I can enjoy this kind of caper, you know, this kind of comedy. I enjoy watching things like The Simpsons and Futurama and Friends and stuff, all things that have like episodes of like half an hour, but the idea of me watching comedy stuff for like an hour and a half, or it's just not my taste at all. So once we got into that point where I've been observing these characters do their thing for 25 minutes, half an hour, I was like, okay, so what else has this movie got for me now? Because, you know, I need something else now. And there was literally nothing, no horror to fall back on. The finale, when we get to it, it's really low-key. I mean, compared to the first 3 Child's Plays, which all 3 of them had these really big, explosive climaxes with all this carnage and chaos and Chucky getting battered 6 ways from Sunday. It was great. But this film, nothing like it. It takes place at this graveyard and there's a bit of shooting and somebody gets burned, but it's just nowhere near as good. I mean, honestly, I didn't care who died, who lived, who got resurrected, who didn't. I just wanted to get to the end. I was mentally sleepwalking through this final bit. And the human characters in this film, and there's this whole subplot where these 2 teens have had to run away from home because the girl's dad doesn't approve of their relationship. So they end up, that plot line ends up converging with the Tiffany and Chucky plot line. So they end up on the same road trip, if you see what I mean. But all those characters, they just weren't particularly interesting to me at all. I just couldn't get behind them. There's some good actors involved. I mean, John Ritter, I've seen loads of things with John Ritter in throughout my life. Katherine Heigl, I remember her from Grey's Anatomy and Under Siege, but she seems like she's just smiling through this film until she can find a better project. There's one of the characters at one point just randomly gets run over by a bus, and I was like, don't care. Oh, that brings us on to the kills. And there's at least 2 kills in this film which don't even make any sense to me whatsoever. There's one where there's like a row of nails lined up on this dashboard, and then when this guy comes quite close to him, Chucky does something and all the nails just fly into his face. But I'm not even sure what he does. Is he using magnets or something? I don't know. Maybe if I watched it again and slowed it down, I'd see the process of what he's done there. But in the moment, it just made no sense to me. I was like, what? There's this other one where Tiffany this time, I think she hits this glass ceiling with a champagne bottle, and all the glass shards fall down onto this couple when they're in bed, and all the shards just like stab them all to death. But I just think to myself, if you did that for real, surely all the shards would just come down. They would cut you, but they wouldn't come down like missiles and like lodge themselves into you all over your body. It just wouldn't happen that way. So I don't know. Weird thing, going back to that scene with the nails, Chucky initially gets a big, like, knife out in order to do the job, and Tiffany says, no, what are you trying to do? You're in the 90s now. As if this film is now in the 90s, so he's got to do different stuff. But Child's Play 3 was also in the 90s. Child's Play 2 was also in the 90s. What gives? So I've left the ending, I mean the secondary ending, until the end of my long list of negatives, because it's such a bad little thing that happens right just before the credits. Tiffany has a baby, and if ever there was a jump the shark moment in Child's Play movies, this has got to be, I imagine. I'm just like, what? She has a baby? It didn't make any sense to me at all. I didn't mind them having sex earlier on in the film. The fact that they would try and simulate that made sense to me, because they've both been lonely for quite a long time. Tiffany as a human, and Chucky and Charles in this doll. So it made sense that they would do that and try and feel some sort of closeness, even if they're not actually doing the act properly, And there's a nice little joke in there about rubber, so totally fine with that bit. But the childbirth part, I mean, no at all. So on the whole, no, did not enjoy this film at all, really. This was a massive climb down from the first three films for me. Just not my bag. I mean, I will add the disclaimer that I'm just not into horror comedies, and this is definitely that. If you're into that kind of thing, you may get a lot of mileage out of this film, but this is certainly not one I will watch again. Even if I go back and watch the Child Play films again in the future, I'll just watch the first three and not bother with this one. I'm not sure about the later sequels yet, but there we are. So, shall we get the bag of terror out? I think it's time. There's not much in here, I'm afraid. We've got 1.5, just 1.5 bloody axes out of 5 for Bride of Chucky. That is a massive climb down from the 4 bloody axes that I gave to each of the first 3 Child's Play movies. We don't even have a pin for the horror locations map. I didn't discern that there was any new location for this film. I'm not even sure where it was set, though I will double check that. So, I don't know, I guess next time we've got, it's Seed of Chucky next time, the 5th film. So hopefully that will be a return to the pure horror roots of Child's Play and ditch the comedy. But until next time, bye-bye. Well, it turns out there is a new pin to be done, because this film switches to New Jersey, or at least it heads there, so we'll put a pin in if I can avoid knocking it over. So that's another little area of the map knocked off. Scroll back out, and there we have it. So at least Bride of Chucky gave us something.